No holding hands. Sorry.
So we would like to thank the board for coming down and visiting with us. Not a big turnout. I think there's several reasons for that, but we do appreciate you coming down and spending your time and the service that you provide us here at Cary School. So, like Heather talked about, we are only going to deal with these two questions. We'd like to keep it to those two questions. If you have other questions that you might like, I think we've got some Post-it notes. Oh, actually, she's bringing another easel, and we can write it on there. But we we would like to try and stay focused on the first two questions here and kind of go from there. So, Mr. Breen will write our important outcomes down, and we'll just start with that first question. What are the most important outcomes to you in public education here at Cary School?
First thing
Yes.
that comes to my mind is just that my kids are ready for college and later life, as far as education.
Okay.
I just like to say, kind of going along with that, is that our children are ready to be able to support themselves, to support their families, have the skills that they need, whether it's college or whatever, to be able to take care of themselves.
Life skills. Lifelong learners.
Does that sound about right? Economically and lifelong learners, should we say? Will that work?
Nancy?
I think it's important for those students that do not have the typical family, whatever that, and they don't see a path to a certificate or to college or even to a job or to living on their own, that they get those, that help, those resources, not, pay their rent, but help them to learn how to do that when they don't. Because I think we have a lot of kids, and unfortunately, we don't just educate the ABCs and 1, 2, 3. And so in our whole child education, making sure that they can see a pathway to a future for themselves.
One of the things that I'm sure most of you are familiar with it, but we've got this, the seniors have to have the 2 math classes and their senior year, and we've had a construction math and we have a personal finance. And that personal finance class really ought to
It's a
be,
good one.
ought to be, everybody
It
take
is.
it.
Every kid should have to
It
take that
is.
class.
They come out of there, Miss Young does such a great job, You talk to them about interest and they're like, huh? By the time they get out of there, and she does a good job of that. And it's one of those things, but I think that helps because a lot of them don't have a clue, and some of them are, they're all gonna need it, so.
They realize it's not just another math class, it's something that they are going to use.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Yes.
and they talk about it and they, yeah.
Yep.
I know I'm a facilitator, but I'm part of this community in an odd sort of way. I want them to know how to be a good citizen. I want them to know how to be an educated voter, how to learn how to take care of their community, how to build a better world, I guess, or how to be a leader in the world.
A leader?
Yeah.
Along the lines of the last couple that we talked about with the pathway, that they kind of know where they're going and who they can have to help them and be a good citizen, is that I think it's really important that they feel important. They have that emotional stability, that they're a good person and, everybody's trying to do the best they can, but they need to be emotionally stable and have that good self-esteem.
Can I say self-esteem? I was gonna say that's.
Okay, again, what is the most important outcome to you in this public education?
Should I go over here next? Is this which page?
Flip the page over.
Or just flip this page?
Heidi?
That they come out with a foundation to build on. I'm not talking about a fluffy foundation, I'm talking about a solid foundation to build on. If they don't have a solid foundation, if you don't have the basics of education to start with, then how are you gonna build upon that?
So
Then
is
there's
that-
gonna be a missing brick.
Is that kind of like the first one, so that they're prepared to go on to school or go?
Just that they have,
Ready for the next
Basic.
step.
you know, yeah,
Basic
that they
life
have
skills.
reading, writing, and arithmetic.
Be-
that
that they're
have-
literate.
Foundation
Yeah,
regardless of where they're gonna go,
You know,
rather it's college
and
or
it doesn't matter
training.
if you're talking about an ESL kid or English as a second language, or the kids that go to GATE or whatever it is, their foundation is gonna be different, but that doesn't mean that
Very
their
individualized.
foundation can't be a solid foundation.
Okay.
And I think sometimes that we get a little distracted from that. And the fact that everybody's foundation is not the same.
A lot of different foundations, huh?
And that
So-
doesn't mean that they have to have high test scores, because there are kids that do not test well,
It's true.
and that doesn't mean they don't have a grasp of the concept.
Darren?
Greg, I think just as you sit here, you guys have done one of these meetings in other parts of the community. What were some of their responses? That'd be interesting.
I'm actually hearing a lot of the same responses. We heard a lot about the whole child. A lot of people talked about the whole child, and they wanted that whole child focus, making sure that they have the life skills after they graduate, making sure that they are ready for either college or a technical path if that's where they wanted to go. We heard a lot about being a good citizen, so it's interesting that the dynamic of Cary versus the dynamic of Ketchum, people still want the same thing. So.
Parents are parents.
I would say actually, I'm hearing something that's slightly different here, which I'm glad to because it sometimes can be repetitive. And what I'm hearing from this general conversation right now is a real want or desire for practicality. And I didn't really get that in the other conversations. And what most of you are bringing up is a practical approach to education, which I think is really fundamentally sound. And I think that I'm glad to hear that brought out from the points that you've discussed so far. You know, it's not so much the end game, but it's more the preparation game, and it's the practical preparation to be just a good person who's capable of functioning on their own. That's not really a bad goal to have for anybody that comes through your system, so I appreciate that.
I heard a lot of people up there wanted the arts and funding for that. And I also heard a lot of them that wanted funding for vocational education, more of that. Quite a few people, I was actually surprised, that wanted to see more vocational offerings available.
But that goes back to if they have that foundation, then as they get out and they decide to do a vocational thing, then they have the foundation to go that direction. You know, not everybody, we push so hard for kids to go to college, and I'm not dissing on college, all of ours are there, but there, you still have to have people that are willing to deliver the mail, to be your mechanic, to, you know, to work in the grocery stores, to do all of those things. And so the diversity of that is if they have that solid foundation to start with, then they can go in whichever direction that they want to. Sometimes I think we get so sidetracked on making sure that they have all of those opportunities before it's even time for them to have those opportunities, that it's like, where's the foundation? We've lost the foundation.
And I think that one thing that I've heard Superintendent Holmes say, I've heard teachers say it, is that our goal as teachers and as a board and should be to give children the skills to do whatever they want once they leave. And I think that's, our ultimate goal is to make sure that the kids that leave our care is that they have the skills, no matter what they want to do with it, they just have the skills to be successful in whatever they want to do with their life beyond school. So, yeah.
And I agree. It's kind
Yeah.
of like working in the EMS system because a basic paramedic has to have the same foundation as your basic EMT does. And they start at the same level. And they have found through the years that if you do the basics well, a lot of times the other interventions are not needed. And I think that's how education should be. The basics should be sound, they should be fundamental, and they should be done well, so that as those that want to progress further, they have that, and those that don't still have that.
So is there anyone else that we haven't heard from on outcomes?
I'm going to say something. A few years ago, we had Sir Ken Robinson here, and I had a chance to watch his TED Talk and also read his book, a couple of his books. And one of the things he talked about is like finding your bliss, finding what you're good at. He brought up examples like Mick Fleetwood from Fleetwood Mac was a total disaster in school, but he sure could play drums. And there's also Twyla Tharp, who was a choreographer, and she was hyperactive. She couldn't sit still in school, and she is a multi-millionaire successful choreographer. So I think what our school does well too is a lot of times, I hope, is try to find where kids can go with some of their things they have. Not everybody's going to be academic, and I think we all need to recognize that. And one other thing I'd like to say too, and with the newspapers, and sometimes seeing our former students in the newspapers, I call it the civic duty thing. When you see students with their mugshots in the paper, or students we graduated in some cases, I feel like somewhere along the line, there's a little failure there on our part. Not always, but students have to be responsible. But I think overall we're doing a good job with not having so many of those students there. And that includes, that's for the whole county. So I see that as a reflection of the schools too. Because when students go to crime, a lot of times there's somewhere along the line the schools have not done their jobs. And not only schools, but other things, factors.
Anything else on that question? Okay, let's move to the second one, which is, what are the priorities Blaine County School District should focus on to achieve these outcomes? What should our priorities be to try and get to where we want to be?
We have a picture of what we want our students to look like, think like, act like as they leave our doors. What should we focus our time, our talents, our money on to get them there? What do you think our priorities should be?
I think vocational opportunities, like you mentioned, are invaluable. And I think that our society is moving that way. So I think that it would really serve us to have more of those.
I think building relationships with our students is huge. So they have someone they can come to when they're clouds out in it, that they trust. I think that trust is huge, especially during this, their teenage years,
I think as we read more and more about the stresses that our students are under, and as we see it in our own community, our kids that are imploding, we didn't used to see that in our kids. And we're seeing it now. I think the relationship part is, we can't get that student out the door if we can't get them graduated, and if we can't get them through the door alive. So those relationships are becoming more and more important, at least in my opinion.
oh, I think so too.
priorities to achieve these outcomes.
We described it, we were talking about it before we met, to like a wish list. What would be like a wish list for some of the things that people in the community would like to see?
I think we need to make sure that we keep music and art in our schools.
That
I
balance.
think that you would find big problems if music and art disappears out of the classroom.
The whole student again?
Hmm?
Whole student, the whole,
Well,
I think
a
And
lot
you
of
said-
it's just because that's how some people learn. You know, some people can read a book and get absolutely nothing out of it, but they can listen to a song or they can play a song that's about the same thing that the book was about, and they can tell you all kinds of things because of what they get out of music.
can I put sports there too? Because that's a kinesthetic learner,
Oh, sure.
works well.
But I'd like to see you try to do away with sports.
It would be a fun battle to watch, wouldn't it?
I'm moving that we tried to do that.
That's gonna be tough stuff.
Should we say dance?
Where's the rep? Let's yell at it.
Well, no, and that's what I
Anything.
mean, because then we start getting into all of these extracurricular, you know, art and music has always been in schools, even if they didn't have a teacher for that. When I grew up, in middle school, I had 30 minutes that I went to orchestra. We could pick something like that. I grew up in Twin Falls, you know. When I was in elementary school, we met at 8 o'clock and did choir in the mornings. Anybody that wanted to be in choir. The music teacher came at 8 o'clock, and we met in the auditorium, and we had choir. That was in elementary school. So we always had that. After last recess, that's when we did art in our, you know, and the teachers did that because we didn't have that. I have a friend that's actually a PE teacher right now in the elementary schools in Jerome, and that's her job. She teaches elementary all day long, and I think she has 2 elementary schools, I think. She might just have 1. But anyway, and that's what she does. So if, to get rid of that stuff is and you set a kid in a classroom for 6 hours a day,
Especially when they
So,
can't sit
Good
still.
I'll
luck.
put theater on the kids.
So I think what I'm hearing from you is like those, what we call specials in our classes, like
I
our
don't
art,
think we need
our
to go,
music.
I don't think we need to go whole hog wild and do
Yeah.
a bunch of specials. And I made a comment about GATE earlier, and we had one of our kids that was in the GATE program at Cary School, and it was a joke. And it was a long time ago. I'll give you that. It was a long time ago. But another problem that, just from a personal perspective, that I had with the GATE program is, number one, the one that was in the GATE program in our family was a boy, and he was smart. He was also a heavy. Okay, so now you got 2 strikes against you as a boy because you're smart and you're a big kid. And now you want to pull him out of class to send him to GATE.
And I think,
I believe, Mrs. Kuhn, you were the one I had that conversation with that went something like, if he needs a computer program or something to keep him occupied when his work is done, I'd be happy to purchase it.
It was not me.
I think it was in the same place.
Okay, do we have other priorities?
I think we've got a diversity of kids, you know, they do different things, but every kid needs to feel valued and that they have self-worth. I know here, even in Cary, we have kids that just have, home life's not good, you know, they don't feel like they have any value here, and that causes the depression and anxiety, and I don't know how we close that gap, but there's a huge gap with kids who just don't feel like they have any value. They're just going through the motions.
Should I put down, how do we achieve that? I mean, that's a great question. How do you,
is that like the social, emotional
you know,
health?
I don't know, there's cliques, there's groups, and then there's, you know, a high percent to do this or this, and then there's this group of population that we have that just, you know, whether they're low income, whether they're a low SEC, whether they're special ed, they just don't feel like they are a valued person. You know, they see all the fame and the glory go to other kids, and they just feel like I'm a nothing here at school, and, yeah, I worry about those kids. Those are kids that are my at-risk kids, and I worry about them.
And our school's small enough that
It's clicky, yeah.
it's easy to, you know, to see it.
Well, I think that's some of the main, why the problem is, you know, you've got a football team is doing great, you got 34, 35 boys on it, and, you know, you've got 10 that aren't. And they're in a completely different boat. So,
Randy, you have something to add?
And my kids are all in sports, I'm not against sports, but sometimes I think we value the kids on sports more than the education, more than those kids who are getting a 3.5 to a 4.0. And I think sometimes those kids need recognized that are getting, you know, good grades or keeping certain GPAs. Maybe it's because they're not on a sport and they're, you know, they're more into the academic portion of school. And maybe we need to recognize those kids too.
Along those same lines, I'd like to commend Mr. Smith for the BPA program that's actually being implemented and utilized, because that BPA program is an amazing program. And it's an after-school kind of like thing, but that's exactly what it's geared towards. You have the different competitions that they can do, and it's a good thing.
3-4 summer athletes. But that's okay.
Yeah.
That's the well-roundedness.
Mhm.
They can play sports and they can go and do an academic.
And they can even, you know,
They can-
play
they
the
can
clarinet while
do-
they're
they can
in
do
the
well in
midst of
all
it,
three.
or the piano.
On the
or-
bus.
Yeah, on the bus,
Okay,
and the band.
so one more time, what are the priorities Blaine County School District should focus on to achieve the outcomes?
In other words, what we want the school district to do,
Yeah,
not us.
what do we, what do
Well,
we,
what's it
it's
for
it's
us?
budget time. It's budget time, what do we want these people that answer the big questions, you know, what are our thoughts, what do we want them to do? What do we think is
We
best,
want quality teachers and to be able to keep them.
That's what I
quality
say.
teachers be able to keep them.
If we have quality teachers,
Equipment and
most of those things are gonna fall into place.
And let's keep education simple. Let's stop screwing it up. Let's stop trying to make it harder than it is.
We have a large group of teachers that are moving toward retirement, and they elect retirement at any time. A very large group, so.
Do you know like the percentage?
Well, we have 308 certified teachers, social workers, or that type of position. 88 of them this year could elect retirement. Now, they won't, because there's a gap between when they can retire and Medicaid, so we'll keep going. They've got Medicaid, you know? But in the next 5 years, it could be 140. So we could have, in the next 5 years, if everybody elected to retire when they can, we could have about
On
100
video, I
staff
would
term.
let the cameras turn that way.
Any other priorities? Can we do?
We need housing. I don't know what we can do for that, but yeah, something, we have to be able to.
I was telling Greg earlier, keep building those houses.
Well, we have a lot of people that live here that don't have anything to do with the community.
Yeah.
And there's actually quite a few houses being built in the Greenfield subdivision.
They did a bunch last year.
There are couples that
They're
live there
newer
and don't have
families.
kids and aren't involved in the community and they work up in Haley and
Been forward.
But they're
Most of
already
them have kids,
taken,
yeah.
right?
Yeah,
They're not,
yeah, kids.
Right, it's the issue.
I would say, I think our students should have more cultural opportunities. It'd be nice if we were closer to sometimes places like Haley and Ketchum, and that goes to the buses too, and it's hard to get our students up to activities in Haley and Ketchum, and I think that would be really nice to have that. I'm surprised a lot of times that some of our students, I mean, Ketchum's like, I haven't been here in years, you know, and and I'm not saying they have to go to Ketchum all the time, but it's just, there is a lot of cultural opportunities with the Sun Valley Center and things like that. So it'd be nice if we had more, I don't know if it's the bus system or if we just, I really try to prioritize when I make trips up there. It would just be nice if it was a little easier for our staff to plan those trips. Because I feel like there's a lot of hurdles right now.
First one's
Something right there.
drivers.
Yeah, and I get that.
Greg, did you say this was a wish list?
Yes, yeah, it's a,
Okay, I know we can't turn back time, but there was a time when I could, if I had a kid who scores or who's, not even scores, but whose reading abilities were not going the direction I wanted them to, I had the ability to say, I have a kid who needs some help, and I could get some help mid-year. And anymore, I don't have that ability. We just don't have the parapro staff we used to have. And so I have kids, those bubble kids, you know, our low kids, well, even they, our low kids are getting the help they need, and that next layer, but those bubble kids, they just don't get the help they need anymore. And I'm starting to really see it. You know, they aren't getting the help in second grade that we used to be able to give them. So they go to third grade just a little more below. And in fourth grade, so by the time I get them in fifth grade, and, you know, I know we were probably, well, I don't think we were overstaffed. I think we had a program that worked. And now I have kids who I can't get the help they need, or the help that I believe as a professional they need. It used to work here. We used to be able to say, you know, in a group, I've got this kid, does anybody have 20 minutes or 15 minutes they could? And so we'd look at everybody's schedule and somebody'd say, well, if I did this and this, yeah, I can take him or her. And there is not 5 minutes to be had for a kid that's struggling in January anymore. And that makes it hard, makes it really hard.
So I guess I went back to my question as far as the stakeholders, and I understand the budget and everything, but, I mean, it's Blaine County. When I hear we can't find a bus driver, you pay a certain wage, you'll get bus drivers.
I think we're paying them
Oh,
pretty
we haven't
dang
even
good.
incentivized it. I mean, there's like a, how much sign-on bonus?
$1,000.
$1,000 to sign up,
Will it help you
right?
get your
And
CDL?
$16 an hour or something like that. I mean, I work with drivers, so I know what the rate
I'm
is.
just like, I'm not involved in it, I'm just like, that
We're
doesn't
there.
make sense. Like,
Right.
what can we do from a budget standpoint to?
Not much more than what we're doing.
Or even offering
Look at it,
healthcare
honestly.
benefits to that.
Full
so.
benefit package. I mean, it's, for the right person, it's a great job.
And it's not a problem that's just within Blaine County. I know like
It's
Mountain Rides
nationwide.
is struggling. I've seen ads for, you know, truck driving companies can't find drivers. So it's not just our county. And I think it goes to that, that point that we talked about earlier about students and kids finding their fit and being pushed to maybe where they're not fitting in. So I think that's kind of where we, you know, we're seeing that crunch in certain areas like vocational aspects or areas because we pushed kids to where they didn't fit.
It's hard to get a guy with a $50,000 student loan and a degree in whatever it might be to go, sheesh, I'm gonna go and be a bus driver and instead of using this degree, and so it's a little bit.
I still think, I don't know.
That
And
and
you guys
the
would know where I'm at.
unemployment.
Like, there's
Yeah.
50,000 a year and,
Yeah.
you know, 30,000, whatever. There's room in between there, I would think. But I'm just floored, like, we come here and I feel like all the priorities were on that list, like, that has nothing to do with education. That's kind of, like you guys are talking about, like, the basic things, and everybody's had that consensus. I mean, I don't know, like, what are our priorities from an education? You walk out with, you know, reading, writing, arithmetic, all that stuff, and, man, there's a lot of stuff involved in it. I mean, I take my hat off to you teachers and stuff for all the stuff that you deal with. I mean,
And why wouldn't you
It's-
want to be a bus driver? You got 35 kids behind you?
Well-behaved
You're
kids.
trying to,
Work a split
you're
shift.
trying, yeah, you gotta.
I think there's a bigger picture point to what you're saying though, as far
Yeah.
as, like, with stakeholders and so on. Because if you look at we're defined by our geography and our environment. And our environment is basically, to me, that of an island. Like, we pretty much live, Walmart's 80 miles away, that's an island,
right?
right?
Costco,
So,
yep.
all of those things really are defined by our geography. And so also when you put that in line with the fact that our population is really flatlined, it's basically sustaining itself. There's no growth pattern involved with it. So when you have that island with a non-growing population, you have to create sustainability within what you have as a community in order to continue to function as a community. because as people die off, you're gonna have to backfill those roles in situations that, to me, I mean, I'm gonna get myself off. But the educational system.
Good, I appreciate it. I
the
came here to listen
educational
to the board, so
system-
thank you.
The educational system really needs to provide for filling all of those gaps as they arise, right? How do we set up a system, educationally within the valley, that takes people through, backfills the openings that come up as people move on from their roles or places they are? Because when you look at it, there's not really a lot of housing here. So the people who live here pretty much have a house. There's not a lot of homeless people here. So as they go through the system, they have children, their children take over their house, they're gonna go into the workforce, they're gonna keep the economy functioning within the valley that we live in, right? I mean, that's kind of, I like what I'm hearing from you as a group, because you're actually identifying that more than other people, because you do get some grander visions and grander ideas, but the functionality of it is to really keep the system itself functioning in perpetuity so that you have a economy and a community that continues to thrive in the long run. That's kind of what, if I was to boil it down, that's what I'm hearing.
But part of what we're also experiencing here is also a nationwide issue, is that our aging population far outnumbers our youth that are coming along. So if we have 10 drivers that are aging out and we only have 3 coming along, just because of the difference in population in those various age groups, that's gonna be a challenge too, to figure it out.
And the math and science teachers that are in college right now to be educators.
We still have positions from last fall we have not filled as a district.
There just isn't people there.
And I think that goes back to the point. How can we, or what are the priorities in our system to generate the rejuvenation of what currently exists here, right? Like, the people go through our system, if everything is rosy and beautiful enough, then they could go through our system, be well educated, go on to university or college, get the proper credentialing, what they need, then return here and re-input into the system, generate the revenue that we provide through the school district, that goes into the local economy, that goes around and gets spread around, and you keep an economic system functioning, really. I mean, I'm really glad for this conversation tonight, because you've identified that a little more clearly than the last conversation we had like this.
Are there any other priorities before the board kind of talks about what else they've heard?
Does that sound about right? Because it really is a problem.
It-
Problem of low unemployment.
True.
Yeah. Does bring problems.
Well, and before we
Is
end
that a good
tonight,
thing, economy?
I know,
Is that a
I'm
wonderful
trying
thing
to
from an
understand
economic standpoint?
how the
Low
problem-
unemployment?
Good for the workers.
Yeah, that, yeah.
It's good for the workers.
Same guy, yep.
yeah, before we end tonight, I honestly believe kids get a great education at Cary School. And we provide a great education with relationships, but every school's got concerns, you know, and every school's got students that are, if we just knew what everybody was going through, it would be probably a pretty sad day, you know, because everybody's carrying a lot. But there's a lot of education in those posters over there. Working in a group, working together, being on a team, being part of something, supporting each other. There's a lot that go into that.
Are you guys good with your list of things so far? Because we'll do our, I think we can do our summary conversation, because I have some wonderful thoughts I've gathered from you guys as far as that goes. Did you have no thing?
I'd be interested to know what people remember or got out from their, individually, from their high school experience, from their elementary. What sticks out in their mind that was important, that they gained life value, that you can look back and maybe that's something that we can focus on. I mean, I think we all remember those teachers that stuck out and helped us out. Maybe an experience in band like Heidi talked about, or a sporting activity. I mean, I think those things are great, and I think if we, you know, like you talked about, just find those opportunities and not be complacent with them. Just it's good, and keep what's good and find those opportunities to do a little bit better. But there's good out there. A lot of good happening.
On that note, one of the things that drives me crazy as a society is that it seems they funnel these kids from kindergarten to the day they graduate, and I may be overselling it, but it seems like they're funneled into college, and there's so many more opportunities available. You know, it might be the bus driver, it might be the plumber, it might be the rancher. It's all those things that are available that we see in our community, that it takes every kind of person to make this community go. It takes that person ringing up your groceries. It takes the banker. It takes the chiropractor. It takes just everybody. And I just hate to see the kids pigeonholed into that and told, and almost browbeat to the point that you've got to go to college, you've got to go to college. And I see, and in this conversation, that let's build that base, that foundation. Let's put those building blocks on the Lego, and let's build this little foundation in this pad. And if they want to go and be whatever it might be, an astronaut, a physicist, if they want to go and be a business owner, if they want to go and be a contractor, a farmer, rancher, whatever that is, let's build that education. That's just that, it's simple to say, that foundation, that if they want to go this way, it's there. If they want to go this way, they've learned it. If they want to go into music, they've got that foundation. If they want to go whatever, and that's the vision that I see, and it's what I hear a lot right here tonight, too.
Well, one thing that Blaine County does that most, we were meeting with President Fox from CSI the other day, and he was kind of amazed by this too, but our kids have to have 3 CTE, which is what we used to call VOTEC back in the day, and now it's career and technical education. Stay tuned, we'll change it again next year, but no. But our kids have to have 3 credits in that, district-wide, to graduate. So even if they're going on to college, if that's what they choose to do, they have to have 3 credits in that. So that's a lot of what Greg and Ryan do here at Cary. So no, but there's always more and more that kids want to do. It's how do you make it all fit? But that's a point of pride for me anyway, that we require that as a school district.
I was just gonna say, as far as, I really like the direction where the kids are starting to get dual credits and things. But, you know, after my kids are in college and how expensive it is, and it would be really nice, you know, when they got to college if they didn't have to take that first 2 years. But I'm thinking if a few kids can do that, it would be nice if that was more standard, like you didn't have to jump through a lot of hoops to do that and go in a separate classroom, you know, and that's probably not a local thing to change, but as a parent, statewide or whatever, it would be really nice if, you know, that was more a standard option, and then if kids didn't want to do that, you know, they wouldn't. But I know it's kind of tough to have the motivation to do a lot extra, but I think a lot of kids could do that as a standard thing.
Yeah, and they can graduate with a lot of credits
Yeah.
here.
I mean, my kids
those-
never really taken much opportunity to do that.
And those 2 girls that graduated with their associates before their high school, it worked them. They were tired when they were done with that.
Yeah.
Well, and if you graduate.
And maybe it's harder than I think, but
If you graduate with some credits, it doesn't mean you have to go on for 4 years. You could take that to CSI and get your technical certificate in whatever area you're interested in and move on.
I'd like to add to what Ryan said, just about the diversity of offerings that we have and having more vocational offerings as well. What I'm taking away from the conversation here tonight too goes back to the practicality and also to the sense of caring, and that what I've heard from the group tonight is that it's just as important to be able to lift up someone who's failing from a single home, whose parents might be on meth, and get them to the point where they're getting a C average and they graduate from high school as a priority, and is something that the funds of the district should really be directed to as well, because they're also members of the community. And I've gotten that sense from this conversation tonight pretty clearly, which is helpful, because we've come up with, you know, we're developing this list of guiding principles for our budget, and it's really nice to hear people care about that section of the student population, because they do in fact exist. The gentleman from Oregon there really brought that up clearly, right? Like, that's a big concern for yours. How do you capture them? And they may not be from those dire straits, right? I'm using that as an extreme example, but they may be left out somehow. How does the district environment become welcoming to all and a safe place for all? I think that's a really big priority that we haven't discussed, because there are people who are left out. There are people who are uncomfortable. That's gonna always happen, but how do we use the money to our best, its best effect to be as inclusive as possible? I think that's the word, right? Be inclusive. So I'm just throwing that out there as an observation. Hopefully you're in agreement with that.
And it seems like there's more every year that need the relationships, that need the positive influence in their life.
Well, there's a comment earlier about, do we have homelessness? Last year, we had 74 homeless kids in our district. That's kind of mind-blowing for little old Blaine County.
Do the trustees have any, do you want to recap any other things that you heard?
I like to listen and hear and kind of mull over things and kind of let them stew a little bit as I think. And I've heard a lot of different points, and I think for me, I think it kind of boils down to a point where we've helped a child find what they're passionate about, find what fits them, and help them get to where they need to go to move on from that point. I think that helping them find that passion, helping them find that bliss point where they're happy with what they're doing, they enjoy what they're doing, is our task. You know, when you're a park, right?
How do you know?
But,
25%.
you look like your brother. But when you ask, like, relating to an experience that we had in school, you know, I reflected back to my 4 years that I had in high school, and I thought about, well, what did I do with those 4 years? I did music. Like Heidi said, I was in music all 4 years of my school. I would have been passionate about it. I would have gone on to that, but my mom had other plans now. She actually showed me a gift that I had for mathematics and science that I really did not really concentrate on until maybe later in my high school year, maybe junior. And I realized I really did have a talent for math and science. And had she not directed me towards that, and had I not had a teacher that pointed me towards biology and chemistry, I would not have gone the direction of going on to engineering. I was planning on going into music, but I totally switched gears, went to engineering instead. And that is where I found my passion. And I had a teacher that helped me find that passion. I was passionate about music, but it was not where I was meant to go. And I think that's what our job is as a board, as educators, is to help those kids find the passion, find where they want to go, so that they become adamant about where they're going in their future, whether it be like they might have like a great talent for welding. You know, maybe that's what they're, you know, they want to offer that service to others. Maybe they want to become an electrician. You know, maybe they want to find something else that fits them, but we need to, as their leaders, to help them find that passion and that bliss where they're going to be happy. You don't want to send kids off to something that they're going to hate to do the rest of their lives. So I think that's, you know, one of our priorities as a district is to help kids find what they like to do, find them, you know, find that niche that they fit into, and help them feel proud of that, help them feel comfortable in that, and help them to have confidence in that. And that's, you know, that's kind of what I've gathered from here is we need to find where we can help those kids feel comfortable in their future and with themselves and in their own talents and abilities.
I just got, thinking about the priorities again, you know, we've kind of been in a tumultuous time for a few years, and we finally got the ship going in the right direction. We've got all of our oars in the water, and we're pulling forward. You know, it's almost like we just need to start staying the course. And, you know, kind of been everywhere. Dr. Holmes came in at a horrible time in the district, you know, we were inverted in our finances, and it was a tough time, and I think we finally got it ironed out where we're moving in the right direction, you know, I hate pulling the oars out and saying, well, we need to do this, but not this. It's like we're finally going in the right direction. We finally got kids bought into the system, we got parents bought into the system again. The negative stuff in the paper is going away, you know, it's like, if I had a priority, it's just keep going in the same direction that we're going right now.
Did you have something, Ryan?
Yeah, I mean, on the outcomes, some of the notes I just took, a self-sustaining child with life skills is important to put someone out that at 18, if they had to, they could make that rent payment. They could have skills to bring in an income, to go to the post office, to, you know, just life skills, the things that you and I do every single day. Let's have the district teach those skills and move them along with self-esteem. I think that's something that you've mentioned several times, is that we've got to look out for these kids that are stuck in the corner or are not part of the peer group. Let's bring them all together. I'm really horrible at this.
You're doing all right. Put it out there.
And to be a good citizen, you know, a good citizen that, as someone was saying, can do part of their civic duty, that knows the roles of government, that knows personal finance. I think that's such an important part of the puzzle right now. And then as far as the priorities, obviously there was some music and art that was brought up, the vocational, the sports. I know here it's very important, and it's a mentality that these kids know they're winners. And it's not just because of the record on the scoreboard or the record at the end of the season. They honestly believe when they step on that field that they are that court, that whatever it might be, the cheerleaders, the band, they all know that they're good. And it comes from the teachers here that help build that self-esteem, that I honestly believe that they don't think that they've got every opportunity to win. And I want them to have that when they leave this high school, that's what they can go and do anything, that they can win at anything that they set their mind to, any goal, desire that they have. It's just that mentality that they know they can win. They know they can do it. And I think that's part of building that life skill.
On the football note too, I really liked this year because the coaches really thrived on, and they're also teachers, but they really thrived on having those kids help other kids to keep their grades up and to make sure that they're eligible to be there with that team, and they really thrived on the education portion of it too, and not just, you know, we're winning at football, but we've got to be able to, you know, have this knowledge too, so you guys have got to do both. And some of the kids really stepped up to the plate to, you know, help, like, be a support to some of those kids in subjects that they were struggling in, and I really liked that. Like, I think it not only helps these kids know that they can help their peers, but it also helps these kids know that they can do it because they just got that grade up, and now they can be out with the team.
Did you have any more comments, Kelly? Ryan, do you have anything?
I just want to mention that if you guys ever have any questions or ideas or something, it's so much easier and it's so much nicer to get it in a forum like this or a chat. We bump into each other at the grocery store, the convenience store, wherever it might be, as opposed to the negative letter in the paper that, geez, we're just, you know, we're being shady or we're doing it behind closed doors or that kind of stuff. We're available. We're open to you. This is where we get our ideas. This is where we get our knowledge, your visions for it. Please come and talk to us, you know. Send us an email, give us a phone call, whatever it might be, but
Before the vote.
Yeah, before the vote, that's very important, you know, I mean, the schedule was not a popular, I haven't heard anything from down here, but up there is not a very popular opinion down there.
Not popular down here, 17th of August? Jeez.
Did you guys?
I think it's
I have a
great
question.
for down
Get
here
your feedback
because the
from
farmers
Terry.
need the kids
A
at that
different
time.
schedule For our school
You know,
than
so
up
most
there.
farmers need our kids.
You know what I'm saying? Like,
So,
if we're happy with the new one,
like I said,
they're
we're-
not, you know, is that?
I hope you can communicate with us and get to us and bounce your ideas or your thoughts or your, even your gripes. I mean, just come and talk to us one-on-one or get with us, so that's.
One thing that I think down here would be kind of fun to bring in, and maybe it will fit into a class we currently already have or something, but is maybe, you know, have a day or two as maybe our kids get to juniors and seniors, I don't know when would be a good time, but that they can say, you know, I want to be an engineer, and they can go and like sit with an engineer for a day or two and see what they do and see if that's really what they want to be. Or, you know, I want to be, like my son's really wanted to be a pilot now. Maybe he could go and like see what a pilot does for a day, you know. I don't know like if this is possible, but if it would fit in with, you know, where like one of our vocational or something where our kids can go and sit with an electrician or a welder or, you know, job shadow for a day or a week or something and see if that's really where they want to be, like, because then maybe they'll change before they graduate, you know. Maybe that really wasn't where they wanted to be, and that way they're not going through college or through the certifications and then decide, oh geez, no, I don't want to be in the crawl hole.
I think you could actually even list that in your priority list, is career orientation.
Yeah.
What you're really talking about is career orientation, because you really don't want to pigeonhole. It's just like being like somewhat biased, right? Like you shouldn't be biased towards college, but you shouldn't be biased towards VOTEC either. You should be biased towards what is the best for the individual, whoever the individual is. And then that really goes into career, which I think is really important.
And I
because
think it would
everyone
help
should
them
have-
get excited for what they're.
Career exploration.
Well, was that
See.
part of the goal of the senior project